So here we are again. It's been a bit more than 1 year ago I installed GNU Linux on my main machine. After almost 30 years as Windows user, I chose Linux as my primary operating system. But before I continue, here's a little preface to this story. The first time I encountered Linux was sometime in 2003 or 2004. I saw a colleague playing with this new operating system on his laptop, and I could see that didn't look like macOS or Windows. Mind you, back then I didn't know anything about GNU Linux or distributions. So I got curious and I downloaded Fedora Core 1 and I installed it on my computer. And I really liked it. Its icons looked much more modern and the distro itself felt much more polished and stable than Windows XP that I gladly used at the time. However, I was just starting my career as a graphic designer and, you guessed it, I depended heavily on Adobe programs, be it Photoshop, Illustrator or InDesign, which weren't back then and are still not available on Linux to this very day. So I crawled back to Windows. However, I would from time to time download and watch what is happening in the Linux world. It was usually Ubuntu, Fedora, or Linux Mint that I downloaded to check it out. Anyway, it is now September 2020, and it's been just a little bit over 1 year since I got fed up with Windows 10 and its telemetry, privacy issues, extensive crapware, and increased general instability of the operating system. After trying several different distros, including Ubuntu flavors, Pop! OS, Manjaro, Elementary, and many Arch-based distros, I settled on Linux Mint Cinnamon 19.2. I was amazed by the looks, stability, and usability of Linux Mint. It was really a joy using Linux Mint from day one, seriously. Linux Mint is arguably one of the best Linux distributions for newcomers who are not used to GNU Linux. Cinnamon desktop environment is visually very close to how Windows look. So if you shift from Windows to Linux Mint, the learning curve really isn't very steep. At least it wasn't for me. However, a small disclaimer, I have been trying out Linux distros since 2003-04 and therefore I have a certain knowledge of how Linux works, looks and feels. But I can tell you that I have installed Linux Mint on people's computers, including my parents, who never previously had any user experience with Linux. And they all use it to this day with my minimal support and maintenance. And it really saved many hours. Today I'm running Linux Mint Debian Edition 4 on my workstation and Debian testing on my laptop Lenovo T450. As you can hear, I'm very fond of Debian. I love Debian's social contract, its legacy, stability, and the package manager. We have it here, Debian social contract from 97. This is what I really like. Debian will remain 100% free. Debian will give back to the free software community. Debian will not hide problems. And Debian's priorities are their users and free software. Works that do not meet our free software standards. That they include contrib and non-free areas. This is something that user of Debian can choose to include or not include in their repositories. This is really something that I like about Debian, the openness and transparency. Anyway, I really like apt and the way it works, the package manager in Debian. It is logical and in my opinion very easy to use. If you want to install a package, you just type sudo install package name. And if you want to update repositories or upgrade packages on your system, it works in a similar way. apt just works and I always use my terminal when I want to install, update or remove a package. It feels very natural to me, so I never use Software Center nor even the legendary Synaptic Package Manager app. What I used to use Windows for, now I'm almost totally using Linux to accomplish the same things. Browsing the internet, writing and editing my articles, poems, and my book in progress, maintaining my personal website, recording my podcasts, video essays, and even playing some games. For all of this, I'm using both of my machines running GNU Linux. The only thing I'm using Windows on my stationary computer is one single game I like to play from time to time with my friends, and that is the Division 2. Seriously, the only thing I'm using Windows 10 is that game, nothing else. I really like that I'm so independent of Windows, at least compared to before, but it also annoys me a bit that I'm dependent on it because of one single game. But I reckon it will change once I get enough of that particular game. So, in the end, the question is, what have I learned changing from Windows to GNU Linux for this 1 year? First of all, I learned to call Linux GNU Linux because I think we should all pay respect to the GNU project, Richard Stallman and his crew for making all the important parts and packages that are the integral parts of any GNU Linux distribution. I learned that I can certainly live without Windows, that I for the most part can use Linux and its alternative applications that can pretty much replace Windows-based programs. I also learned many useful commands that I use frequently in my terminal. I actually prefer terminal and I use it anytime I can. And mind you, I'm not a programmer, I'm not an expert using Linux. But using GNU Linux made me aware of all the interesting Linux and free software projects, fascinating people, from developers to YouTubers, journalists, and so on. What got me interested in GNU Linux is the fascination for people working together, oftentimes for free, for the benefit of the community or even the mankind. This fascination of mine only grew stronger and bigger in the past year. There is no such a place in the digital world as GNU Linux and free open source software communities, and I am proud to be a GNU Linux user who is eager and willing to contribute in one way or another. Well, what can I say? I'm looking forward to hopefully many years with the GNU Linux. This past year finally proved that I can manage without Windows, and I'm really, really glad for that.